done.
Who is your daddy? I am your father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?
All right, welcome to episode 18 of Fathers to the Grind. My name is Tim Nestor, and I'm here with Derek Teague, and he's got a few in the background there. Derek, how's it going?
It's been a wonderful night.
Yeah.
Successfully gotten my two boys to fall asleep right away.
Yeah. Well, before we get the show kicked off and start the conversation, just as a reminder to everybody, we do have a Facebook group that has been growing recently, and there's lots of great conversations going on there, some weird conversations too, which is fine. And I'm really enjoying it. So make sure you jump in on that if you haven't yet. Just go on Facebook and search for Fathers of the Grind. You'll find the group there. Request to join. If you're not on Facebook, if that's one of those things you just refuse to do, you can still interact with us via email, fathersofthegrind@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter, Tim_Nestor. And Derek, you're on Twitter too, right? Is it @Derek18 or T?
I don't even know what I am.
Just
on Twitter.
search for Derek T. You'll find him. And so, yeah, we'd still love to interact with you, even if Facebook isn't your thing. So jump on in there. One last quick plug for a recent show I got to be a guest on to kind of promote our show a little bit and connect with another content creator, and his name is Sean Capri. He has a show called We the Gamercast, hosted by WeTheNerdy.com. So go check that out. It was episode 27, I think, and he and I got to talk a lot about Fathers of the Grind, as well as just my history of gaming a little bit. So that was great. So go check that out too. So, Derek, enough of the boring stuff. Let's talk about you. Let's get to the good stuff. Let's talk about Derek.
Should always talk about me.
Yeah. So tell us what you've been playing recently. Have you finished any games recently? What's going on? Give us the scoop.
Okay, so with the release of Battleborn this week, and we've got a semi-big game coming out next week. I really wanted to finish Dark Souls 3.
Okay.
And I did it. I beat it yesterday.
What is it? What do they say? Praise the sun. Is that the thing?
You sound like an old guy. Like, what do them kids say nowadays? Yes, it's praise the sun.
Listen. Okay, here's a non-Dark Souls person, non-Dark Souls player. When I see these memes with some guy who looks like he's right off the set of Monty Python with his arms in the air and it says praise the sun, I'm not sure if I should take it seriously or not. Like, I legitimately don't know what that's all about, but maybe I don't.
I mean,
I don't
it's
need to know.
part of the game. Like, you know,
it looks like it's
the
straight
game's
from
such
Monty
a
Python.
dark game. Like, the game's such a dark game, so there's certain areas in the game that you'll go to, and, like, it's just, like, this beautiful, bright area, and the sun will be shining, and so you just lift your arms up, and then people will write in messages like, praise the sun, and stuff like that. So I think that's where it started.
Okay.
I'm guessing there, because even though I beat Dark Souls 3 and beat Bloodborne, I only played a little bit of Dark Souls 1, a little bit of Dark Souls 2, and a little bit of Demon Souls. Like, I never got into them.
So is there something in the lore about the sun? Is like a sun god? Is the sun a deity of some kind? Or is it just simply something that was born in-game between players?
I'm going to guess, and of course somebody's going to correct me, I think it has more to do with how dark the game is, and that every once in a while the sun will come out, and it's kind of like you're in that moment, and you're like, praise the sun, it's there, type thing.
So, but it's not something that characters in the game say, or it's written everywhere.
No, I don't recognize anybody talking about suns or anything like that. Now, there is like a group, I believe, that has something to do with the suns, but I don't know anything about it really.
All right.
But yeah, so I finished Dark Souls 3. I soloed most of the bosses, but I did have to co-op some of the bosses towards the end, and even in the middle of the game. Like, there was a couple of bosses in the middle. It wasn't that they were hard. I ran into them. It was one of those situations where I wasn't following a guide, and I kind of came into an area a couple of times where I was like, this arena that I'm about ready to walk into looks like a boss fight. And then you kind of get a little bit of a hint, because the game will show like blood stains, and that's where people have died. So if you get to an area and you're about ready to walk into it and you see lots of bloodstains, that's usually like a hint, like, hey, either there's a really, really bad person there, or it's a boss fight. And it's normally a boss fight. So I ran into that a couple of times, and I just decided, so I didn't lose all my souls, to do the boss fights co-op, and I beat those like on the first try. So it kind of sucked because I didn't get to see if I could have beat them legitimately. Because I'll be honest with you, while co-op is fun, and it is fun, it does make it way too easy. Like, you can just summon in a couple of people and wipe out a boss like it's nothing.
Okay, more so than in past games, like Bloodborne?
Bloodborne was kind of the same.
Okay.
Now, one thing I did notice, and again, somebody can call me out for this, Bloodborne, I only called one person in, so it was literally just two of us fighting. This game, Dark Souls 3, you can call two other people in.
Okay.
In fact, tonight, just for fun, I was playing again for fun. I beat a couple of optional bosses tonight.
I'm sorry, but I just like that you had to clarify you were playing this game for fun tonight. Like, sometimes you don't, but tonight you were.
Tonight it was for fun. But the nights before that, it was not.
It was not. It was out of duty.
I was called to duty. Oh, you think that's funny, kids? Go to bed. All right. So, anyways,
they heard the duty. Yeah. Okay. Continue.
Yes, they heard the duty.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was playing for fun, but I ended up deciding to go fight the last boss, the final boss battle. I decided to do it again for fun, and the guy had called in I'm sorry, it was the second to last boss battle, but he had called in. I don't know how he did this. He had called in 3 of us. There was 4 of us running around in there, and I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So anyways, Dark Souls 3 seems a little different because you can call more people. And so it legitimately... Now, you can die. I've died in a co-op battle. But it's pretty hard.
Can you hit each other in that mode, or do you have to be in a certain mode to duel?
You cannot hit each other.
Okay.
I think that would make it way more interesting. That would make it really hard. Probably to the point where people wouldn't even want to do co-op.
Okay.
But yeah, overall, I'm lingering on this too long. Dark Souls 3 was a lot of fun. I like to do, when I'm playing a game that I really, really like, I like to post and hashtag Game of the Year. People freak out about they're like, it's only May. How can you have a Game of the Year? Yes, they talk like that. How can you have a Game of the Year in May? And I'm like, guys, it's the Game of the Year so far. There's probably going to be a game that surpasses it. I think the big thing is we've talked about this game in the past episodes, and I've always said I like Bloodborne more. I can say now I like Dark Souls 3 more.
Uh-oh.
And I'll say, here's the reason why. I think the boss battles in Bloodborne are great. I loved the setting in Bloodborne more. I do like the fighting as well. I won't say I like it more than Dark Souls, because I think Dark Souls is a lot of fun. But the big reason why I would say I enjoyed Dark Souls 3 more than Bloodborne is I like the level design better.
Okay. Okay.
I just had more fun weaving my way through those areas and unlocking secret paths and stuff like that, or shortcuts, than I did in Bloodborne. There was parts in Bloodborne that there was at least 3 levels that come to my mind right away that make me go, I never want to play that game again, just because I don't want to run into those levels again. But overall, amazing game. So far, it is my Game of the Year. I do suspect or expect in the next week or so, my opinion will change, and we'll talk about that later.
Okay. All right. So is that the main game you've been spending time playing then? I mean, I know I've got some to share too, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, we don't really want to talk about you. You're kind of lame.
I'm bored. I'm super bored.
Yes. I finished Dark Souls 3. I'm playing Battleborn.
Oh.
Which, I'll admit, I pre-ordered this game based off of my love for Borderlands.
Okay.
I really did. Even though I wasn't even myself completely sold on it, because I'm like, it's trying to be it's trying to be Borderlands, but it's trying to be different, and that different part of it is kind of turning me off.
Okay.
So I played the beta and the beta really sold me on it. I did a couple missions, and it's funny, I'm not the only one that feels this way, because I watched a commentary on Battleborn today on GameSpot. They have like this lobby show where they just talk about games. And the guy who's reviewing Battleborn, he said exactly what I say when I described my time in the beta with Battleborn, and that is, you feel like you're playing a strike from Destiny. You feel like you're put in this level. It's a little bit more in depth than Destiny strikes, but you're basically fighting your way through mini bosses, and then eventually you hit the main boss.
Okay.
And that's all it is. And then you go back to your main menu screen and you start a new strike, or whatever you want to call it. And I really enjoy it. Now, what makes it feel different is you've got 25 different characters who do not play alike at all. None of them are alike. Only a few actually feel like a Borderlands shooter type character.
Okay.
The rest are melee, healers, magic, all this different stuff, bow and arrow, whatever you want to play with. So far my time with it, while not much because I still am playing Dark Souls 3, I've enjoyed it.
Okay.
It's real good. I also got to play a little bit of Overwatch. Overwatch is an open beta. I did pre-order that one on the Xbox One. So if you are getting it on the Xbox One and you ever want to team up, let me know. It's really fun. It's a lot of people are. I've even seen it on our Facebook page. People being like, "What's the difference between Battleborn and Overwatch?" Yes, they talk like that. What's the difference? They look the same, and they're really not alike at all. I mean, obviously they're both first-person views, but Battleborn is more of a MOBA / Destiny Strike, and Overwatch is more of a Team Fortress online multiplayer shooter where you have things you have to accomplish while you're doing the actual multiplayer shooting, but it's more competitive than when I've played with Battleborn.
Gotcha.
And there's no real single player content. There's just, if you want to fight against bots instead of humans, you can do that.
Okay. All right. And yeah, I have seen it being it's a hot topic of conversation right now, and of course a lot of that has to do with everyone's waiting for the big release next week, which we'll get to. But yeah, it's kind of cool that these kind of, I don't know if they're brand new genres, but they're certainly breaking new ground in the way people approach online multiplayer games, combining a few genres. So it's kind of cool to see this kind of game being talked about a lot. Although for me so far, number one, I have not tried either one. So I do not have an opinion I can share that's worth anything. But neither one has grabbed my attention either that makes me say I really want to play. So it doesn't mean I won't.
Yeah, I was going to say,
doesn't mean I won't try
you
it.
have access to Battleborn somehow.
Right.
And you've not shown any interest in, like, you haven't even talked about it at all, even with me. So I was like, he definitely has no interest in this.
Yeah, I kind of want to, but I kind of don't. So, but you know what? We'll talk about in a few minutes games that we've started and stopped, and I think that would be one of those games. But we'll get there in just a minute. The games that I've been playing, number one, I've been spending a ton of time with Lego Dark Souls. Have you heard of this game?
Yeah, it's a great game.
So amazing, yeah. So
I actually had to buy the guide and follow the YouTube channel for Lego Dark Souls just to get past the main menu screen.
Yeah, what's beautiful about it is it takes everything that's good about Dark Souls, but it makes it way easier and accessible and family friendly. So hardcore Souls fans probably love hearing that. Like, take all the good stuff and keep it, and get rid of all the dumb stuff, like how hard it is, how violent it is, how dark it is.
Did you unlock the praise the blocks
I did.
stance? Did you unlock
I did,
that?
yeah. It didn't make any sense in the Lego version either, so whatever.
Praise the blocks.
Obviously, I'm not playing Dark Souls. Not playing any Lego games either. I fired up Dark Souls 3 for about 20 minutes. That's as much as I played. I'm about to share a very controversial opinion with you about Dark Souls and about Bloodborne in a minute, but we'll get there. Let me talk about games that I've actually finished. Finished Ratchet and Clank. I think I've talked about that enough on past shows. Suffice to say, it is worth the $40. If you have kids, number one, get it. Especially if they want to play with you. Number two, if you just like platformer games, Pixar movies, that kind of colorful type of a game, get it. It's fantastic. It really, really is great. And
yeah, there's been several people on our Facebook page that have praised it. JP just finished it and loved it.
Yep.
Eli Teague, he keeps telling me how much he loves it.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
So,
yeah. That's a big name to drop right there. Easy.
Yep.
Well, Ratchet and Clank
Name
is great,
dropping.
and I will say that the final few levels are a little bit challenging, especially that final boss where you have to balance all sorts of different things, everything from your jetpack fuel to what kind of ammo you have to what attack pattern he's hitting. It gets a little bit difficult there at the end. It's surprisingly tough for a kid's game or a family game, but it's good. I recommend it. Go get it. And then I also finished Tales from the Borderlands, which I can confirm is now my favorite TellTale game series. It's really, really good. And you finished it before, right?
Yeah, I didn't like it as much as you liked it. I thought it was good, but I
thought it was great.
didn't love
I think Walking Dead Season 1 was brand new, did amazing things, was very emotional, and I really enjoyed that. I loved The Wolf Among Us as well, although I did feel at times that started to drag during some of the middle sections, but I did still really like that game a lot. So each one that I've played has kind of overtaken the previous one. So I really liked Walking Dead. I liked Wolf Among Us.
try Game of Thrones.
I liked Wolf Among Us even more than Walking Dead. Now I've liked Tales from the Borderlands even more than Wolf Among Us. So yeah, that's the next one. That's up for me. So we'll see if that one tops Tales from the Borderlands. So
I would say I like Game of Thrones the most, and The Wolf Among Us are probably
what
my
about
two
between
favorites,
Tales
so.
and Walking Dead? You played both of those?
I like The Walking Dead 2, Season 2
yeah.
better, and then maybe Tales from the Borderlands, and then The Walking Dead Season 1, but I don't know.
Well, they're all enjoyable, and as I'm experiencing now, they're great kind of in-between games, if that makes sense. So I finished games like God of War 3, heavier, bigger games, and then I'm waiting for Uncharted 4. It was a great way to fill in the blanks while playing Ratchet and Clank, with my kid and stuff. So liked that a lot, but I finished both of those, and so let's go ahead and talk about our main topic for this week, and that is games you've started and stopped and why. And this includes one game that I started up recently with a lot of peer pressure behind the reason for me to start it up, and that is Dark Souls 3. So I'll let you think about this for a minute while I share some of my answers here, but we have all done this. You've started a game, and maybe it's not just games, maybe it's a TV show or a movie too, but we've all started a game and not finished it. So there's the Jesse Whites of the world who never finished Final Fantasy X, right? There's the Derek Teagues of the world who, if not for easy mode, will never have finished Ori and the Blind Forest. So there's always some reason for it. It could be that you hit a wall of difficulty. I couldn't finish this game I've talked about too many times already. It doesn't deserve this much attention. Aru's Awakening. I couldn't finish it. The final boss is impossible. So we've all hit these walls of difficulty, I think. And in many other cases, we hit a wall of just lack of interest. For some reason, the magic of the game itself just dies away. Maybe we have that moment of clarity where we just go, why am I still playing this? I'm having no fun at all. So we've all had those moments where, for whatever reason, our mood changes or our interest in what type of game or genre changes. But there's also just certain games, and maybe this is just me, there are certain games that even though it's in a genre that I like, the aesthetic is cool, I know that it's highly touted, and I'm talking about Dark Souls 3 here, highly touted for its controls as being the best third-person, action combat controls and just beautiful game and great boss battles. And those are the kind of things that when you describe them on paper are exactly what I like. But I played Bloodborne for about an hour. I played Dark Souls 3 for about 20-25 minutes. And
wow, you really put in a lot of time.
I know. Neither one has been given what you might call a fair amount of time from my perspective. That being said, neither one made me want to keep playing. Both of them I started really late in the evening. Like Dark Souls 3, I fired up. It was close to midnight, and I was already kind of drifting. So I fired it up thinking maybe I'll get hooked and stay up till 1 or something playing. And I was really, really tired, and I just fought a couple of the little gimme enemies as it's doing a tutorial section. So, but I don't know how else to describe it except to say this. I don't love the way it controls, and I don't know what it is about it. I just don't like the way it controls. I don't like the way the fighting feels. I feel like I'm moving a statue that's just come to life. There's something about it I just don't love. I don't know what it is. And so I think there's one of two things. One, it might just be a game that's not for me, and that's possible.
Yeah.
Number two, it might be the kind of game that I need to play it long enough till the controls make sense to me, and then I can start enjoying it because I get into the rhythm. I actually get into a boss battle where strategy comes into play. I think I feel the same way about these controls as many people feel about the Witcher 3 controls, where they're like, oh, it just controls so horribly, and I'm confused by that. I'm like, no, those controls are amazing. I think that's how I'm feeling about the Dark Souls game. So I can relate with, I just have a big question mark in my head with what makes this so great. I don't like the way it feels. So there it is.
Well, I will say, and I'm not going to combat it or make you feel like you're an idiot for not liking it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But I will say that the Dark Souls, more than Bloodborne, in my opinion, has a more slower and deliberate, like, striking style of gameplay.
Right.
So it almost feels, I want to say, even though the game is not realistic at all, when it comes to movement and fighting and armor and weight and all that, it seems more realistic than most games. Like, for instance, I played the, I think it was the beta or alpha demo, I should say, of Neo, which is a game that's coming out soon that it's kind of basically takes a lot from Dark Souls.
Okay.
But it's actually really different because if you go and jump in and play it, first of all, the controls are completely
I've got
different.
the demo
Like
downloaded. I should try it.
It's expired. Just
Oh, it is?
recent.
Never mind. I
Yeah.
will not try it.
But it's very fast paced, but it's very brutal. Like I actually,
Okay.
and again, I will say because I had just switched over to it, it may just be more brutal than Dark Souls because I have to get used to it. But when I was playing it, the sword play, everything is really fast.
Mm-hmm.
It's really fast. It's faster than Bloodborne. But at the time I was wearing less armor, all that type of stuff. But it had the same systems. Like you have a stamina bar. You run out of stamina, you're not moving.
Right.
You're leaving yourself open to die. But anyway, so the point I was trying to make is Neo is that type of game, but it's a little bit more arcadey, even though it's still following the same rules as the Souls games.
Okay.
But Dark Souls definitely does have that more realistic, slower combat. Like
Yeah.
some of the bosses, and I'm not going to go into detail, but some of the bosses that you fight, they're designed to, well, a lot of them are designed this way, to destroy anybody who plays Dark Souls aggressive. Like if you try to play it like it's an arcade fighter, the whole design of the boss is to embarrass you and make you feel like you're a piece of crap. And so when you go and fight these bosses, they actually overwhelm you. Some of them, I got one in my mind right now. Maybe some of the listeners will figure out which one I'm talking about for Dark Souls 3. But she's very aggressive, and she'll continue to twirl and dance and move, and she's very intimidating. But she's actually, and I'm not saying this to be like, oh, I'm a Souls elitist, greatest player ever. But when I fought her, it only took me a couple times to kill her because I figured her out. And it was get up close, stick to her body, move with her, and only strike every once in a while when you see an opening. If you go in and you try to hit her 50 times in a row real fast, she destroys you. She finds an opening and kills you. So that's the way the game is designed. And you either like it or you don't, but I think for me, when I first started playing the Dark Souls games, I didn't like it. I felt like how you felt. But
Yeah, even
and I'll
fighting
admit,
some of those little wraiths, like those skeletons at the beginning, just the feeling of the medium swing, regular swing, and strong attack, and then your block or the parry move you can do in the roll. The way each of those individually feels, yes, they feel different and unique from each other, but no, they don't feel good to me from what I'm used to. And I think a lot of that could just
and
be
that's
the
what I was trying to get
newbiness
at.
of me being totally unfamiliar with the Dark Souls games. For someone who's played these a lot, you're listening, just losing your mind, pulling your hair out. Like, I can't believe you would say this about the Dark Souls games. They have the best controls ever. I've heard it all before, and I can't even disagree with you because I haven't experienced enough of it. But they certainly aren't fun right out of the gate. I don't think anyone can argue that. They're not fun games right out of the gate for someone brand new to it.
If you are brand new and you don't know what you're doing, they're not fun. I just don't think they're fun. It was kind of like, I always heard, as I got older, I always heard beer is terrible when you first try it, but it's in a acquired taste.
Yeah,
I always
same with
heard
coffee.
that.
Yeah, both of those.
Oh, just keep drinking it. And I would look at people and I would give them a serious face and I would say, or, with a serious tone, I would say, why would I keep trying something I hate? Like, I hate it, so I'm not going to keep trying it. Now, beer, I stopped trying it and I don't drink it to this day. Dark Souls, I felt that way when I first started it. Like, everybody's talking about how great it is. I was like, oh, it's these elitist douchebag gamers that are like, if you don't play Dark Souls, you are pathetic.
Oh, yeah.
So when I tried it, like a Snobby Tim
Yeah.
gamer.
No, Snobby Tim gave up. Snobby Tim quit Dark Souls 3 after 20 minutes. He was not so snobby.
Snobby Tim is not giving up. But I'm going to sell you on this game. But so I started out like that, and I was like, I don't like this game. I don't like how slow it is. I don't like the way it feels. People say it's never the game's fault. First of all, I'm going to call BS on that. There are plenty of times that I've died in Dark Souls that it's been the game's fault because of terrible camera angles. And all you have to do is follow anybody who plays Dark Souls games, and you'll watch them die from a camera angle every once in a while. But anyways, that's beside the point. So the games are not flawless, but they are pretty damn close.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, I didn't feel that way. And the reason, and I'll admit, the reason I played them and I stuck with them is because of how much people love them.
Yeah.
If these games got no praise, like if they just reviewed good, but nobody talked about them, I probably would have tried them, quit, and moved on.
Yeah.
But the fact that people keep talking about it, keep going, Dark Souls is amazing, Dark Souls is great, game of the year, blah, blah, that made me go, okay, I gotta play Bloodborne. I gotta beat Dark Souls 3. And I did it, and I'm kind of a fanboy now. I want to go back and play Dark Souls 2, and then maybe go back to the original Dark Souls and go further in that.
All right, nice. Well, that's just one example of one that I've started and stopped. And my reasoning behind it is, it boils down to this. It's just, I wasn't having fun. Now, yes, it was a very little amount of time, but I just don't have a ton of time. I don't have a ton of time to play. So honestly, I'd rather, if I'm going to spend an hour, maybe 2 hours, finally getting the hang of a game, I'd rather just spend that time playing Rocket League. On the off chance that maybe it'll click and I'll start to love it, I'd rather just play something I know that I already like.
I really think, again, I'm not going to force you, obviously. I mean, I'm not going to come to your house. Yes, I am going to force you. I am. I'm very forceful like this. Like, it's driving me nuts that you're being a casual Tim. Listen, Tiny Tim, step up your damn game and start playing the game. Here's what here's the one challenge I will give to you. Okay. I think you should play, even if you have to look at a guide just to see how to get there. Mm-hmm. I think you should play the first boss. And if you beat the first boss and there's no feelings at all, like you're just like,
just
okay,
a statue.
Cool, I beat the boss. Then move on.
You know, I'm actually going to be trying to hold my emotions in. There's just going to be one single tear running down my cheek as I defeat the boss.
I just pictured Kevin Bacon right now.
That's exactly what it is.
So, but if you do beat the boss and you're like,
yeah,
okay, I got the hang of this game, and I like that feeling of I beat this boss without anybody helping me. Because in the first boss, I think you can get co-op somehow, but it's not obvious. And it's not easy, so they basically throw you in this boss to beat it by yourself. Sure. So you should be able to beat it with no problems. If I can do it, you can do it. And if you like it, keep playing. If you don't, then I think you should never play these games again, because I just don't think they'll ever hook you.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah, certain games just don't work for certain people. Like, I still can't understand how some people, especially if they grew up in art, like when you described not liking the JRPGs that I just adored, and you're like, nope, didn't like them, wasn't my thing. I'm just stunned. Like, how could you not? But some games just don't click for some people. So,
well, and to be fair, I was younger and didn't understand that stuff, and I won't say a shallow gamer because that's so stupid, but I was into like sports and shooters and stuff like that. Now that I've gotten older, I do, and we'll talk about this in a second, because we are on the main subject now, but, well, actually, let's just jump into it. Final Fantasy VII, I shared the story, how I bought it.
Okay, yeah, this is one that you never finished, right?
Exactly. My imaginary cousin is like, oh, you gotta buy it, because I'm an elite gamer. And so I bought Final Fantasy VII, I'm using this money that I don't have. This is back before I had a job. I was probably How old is Final Fantasy VII? 20 years now?
97, so it's almost 20 years, yeah.
Yeah, so you're talking I was probably 8 years old, because clearly I'm 28.
Nailed it.
You nailed it. I was only 8. But I was in my teens, and I buy this game, with my money, and I just didn't like it. I expected, and I talked about this before, so I'm not going to bore our listeners. I expected something different, and I didn't get that. I got this boxy looking. I mean, of course, I was overwhelmed by the cutscenes, but the overall game, even back then, was just ugly. Like the gameplay part of it, and then to have turn-based, something that I never played. I think the only RPG I ever played with him, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is Secret of Mana. I played it co-op, and I don't believe that's turn-based. I think that's like an action RPG.
No, it's an action RPG. Yeah, you bring up a little menu, and it kind of freezes the battle as you select your spells or items. But yeah, otherwise it's all action. Yep.
So yeah, that was the only RPG I remember playing on the SNES with him.
Yeah.
So I wasn't impressed with Final Fantasy VII. Now, I recently bought it after the PlayStation Experience.
That's right.
And my goal was, and they made the game easy. Like, you could just go in easy God mode. You could do whatever you wanted to finish this game. And I was like, well, I'm going to try to play it legit, but I also get the benefit of actually speeding through. Because you can actually, I think it's times 10 speed. So you can run through the boards and levels at a faster rate.
That's a good way, especially for those who have played it a million times. That's cool.
Yeah. So there's a lot of cool things about it. And I was like, okay, I can do this. I like Final Fantasy games now. They've got the graphics are a little bit better. They're
Still
not
blocky,
as ugly. Yeah, but it's not as bad. It's a cleaner picture, and I can speed through it. And if I get stuck on anything, if I have to, I can turn on easy God mode and destroy them. And I played like 8-9 hours, which probably meant I was 15 hours into the game because I was, again, doing it super fast. And I just didn't have a desire to finish it. I was like, well, I already know the big thing that happens. I actually already know the entire plot of the game. So I know everything that happens. I know everything about it, and I'm like, I'm just not having fun. Like it's not a terrible game. I just wasn't in the mood for it, and I've been having trouble with JRPGs since probably Final Fantasy X was like the first one I played and beat. Yeah. And then every JRPG I bought after that, I've like played a lot of them, and well, I shouldn't say that. I have beaten a few, but I just don't get into them as much. I prefer Western RPGs, so I usually walk away from the JRPGs.
Well, I don't blame you for giving up on 7. I mean, I think 7 is an amazing game in its own right, but it also, I think it's just one notch above 8, which is one of the Final Fantasies that I never beat. I never beat 8, never beat 12 or 13, and I started each of those. I got really far in 8, and the characters and the story were just not there for me. A little too emo, a little bit too overly serious. I didn't love it. 7's story and characters were a little bit better, I thought, but I don't blame you. I mean, to me, it's not the best that Final Fantasy has to offer, even though it is pretty great. It's groundbreaking.
Well, and I think it's harder to, if you've never played 7, and you try to play it now,
right?
And granted, if you're like a 12-year-old now, maybe it'll impact you, but as a 28-year-old trying to play this game now. In playing so many other JRPGs, Western RPGs with more mature, better characters, better worlds, it's kind of hard to play it and be like, yeah, I love it. I understand why people loved it. Like, I love Final Fantasy X. Yeah. It's hard for me to even think of a flaw in that game. But I bet you if I'd never played it and played it right now, I would find many, many issues with it. Yeah. Like, oh, this is stupid.
Blitzball was a pretty major flaw, but continue.
Yeah, I just didn't care as much. Like, I kept losing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm okay with it. As long as it doesn't stop me from moving forward with the game, I don't care.
Right.
So, anyways, Final Fantasy VII is one of mine.
Yeah. I've got a Final Fantasy one of mine, too. I mean, I just mentioned 8, 12, and 13, although those are all for the same reasons, and it's basically there was other stuff to play, and they just didn't do for me what previous Final Fantasies had done, whether it was 6 or 5, 6, 7, 9, and then I really liked 10. You mentioned 10. I liked 10 a lot too. So there's just certain settings, certain characters, certain stories that just didn't do it for me. Final Fantasy Explorers more recently, the 3DS game, a little bit of that MMO Monster Hunter Lite experience there on the 3DS. Had some great ideas, but it was not easy on the eyes, and so it was hard to keep looking at, number one. But the combat just got too repetitive over and over and over again. And even though there is a sense of progression, it wasn't enough. There wasn't that really great, satisfying.
You never got hooked.
It didn't hook me. And then, of course, I've talked about before Fallout 4. Although reading about and seeing you talk about your kind of whatever you would call it, you dove back in to Fallout 4.
Mm-hmm.
That actually made me think that is probably one that I'm very likely to eventually go back and play compared to something like Final Fantasy VIII, for example. I own it on the PlayStation Network. I bought it when it was on sale one time. I still don't think I'll ever go back and beat it. Like, there's certain games that I've given up on. Final Fantasy Explorers, I gave up on. I won't go back and beat it. So there's certain games.
Do you still have that, or did you sell
I do still have it, yeah. I do still have it.
You should just trade it in. I think GameStop was given, at one point, they gave me $25 for it. I know you buy more digital now, but just take it in, get $25 and use that towards a PlayStation
According to all the
card.
memes that I see, they'll give you 2 pennies and a used condom. Isn't that
Yeah,
that's what I've seen.
Those memes are definitely accurate.
Yeah,
those are for the idiots that don't actually know how to, work the system a little bit.
That's true.
So,
all right, so there's a few examples of ones that I've started and stopped, but here's the bottom line for why I typically do that. It can be different for each game, but the bottom line is usually we all have to choose. It's like you've got to budget your time somehow. And if I'm going to allocate time and energy towards something, I want to make sure I'm having fun. And too many times I've looked back and been like, wow, I spent 2, 3, 4, maybe even 10 hours on a game or even a TV show or a hobby that I am not enjoying. And for some reason, I didn't realize it till I was spending a ton of time doing it. Like, I'm not even having fun anymore. So I'm trying to cut that off a little bit earlier these days when I realize I'm not really enjoying something. Why keep watching it? Why keep playing it? So yeah, that's usually why I stop. In general, it's more of a having fun, and that could be a combination of just not being good at it, or it could be it's just not fun. I just didn't, it didn't hook me. So what about you? Like, name a few other games that you've given up on, and what's usually your reasoning for that?
all right, before I do this, I know some of you are going to start booing, like, stop talking about Dark Souls. But I was actually thinking about this, and I wanted to share this on our podcast.
Yeah.
I was a big Mortal Kombat fan. Still like Mortal Kombat, but not as much as I did back when Mortal Kombat 2 released and all that. And again, I've talked about this on the show. But here's one of the reasons why I loved Mortal Kombat. And I don't remember who, and it may have been your post, or I'm going to say it was Jesse White's post a while back. Okay. Jesse White asked, like, what was, like, a game experience that you'll never forget or something. And my answer was the first time I ever did a fatality in Mortal Kombat. And I did it on accident because I didn't even know they existed. I don't even remember the full story, like how I even had the original Mortal Kombat on my Sega Genesis, but I was playing it in front of like this young kid, and I just thought it was a fighting game, no big deal, and I pulled off Scorpion's fatality where he burns them.
Yeah.
And I was like, what was that? Anyway, so why is Derek sharing that, and what does that have to do with Dark Souls? As I became a fan of Mortal Kombat, I discovered one of the things I absolutely loved about Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat 3, and so on, was there was a lot of secrets and mysteries to those games. So, like, you could be playing that game for a year and find out about some, like, secret game you can unlock, or
in Mortal Kombat?
Some secret fatality or something like that. There was tons of stuff, because this is, again, before the internet even existed, really.
Yeah, the GameFAQs wasn't a thing yet, huh?
Exactly. So it wasn't like you could go out and go, what's Kano's fatality? Type it in, boom, it's right there, and go do it. Like, you had to figure those fatalities out on your own.
Or you had to buy the recent issue of Tips and Tricks or whatever.
Yeah. And those usually, like, if the game released, it would come out 2 weeks to a month later, you would get a magazine. So you would have the game for a few weeks trying to figure it all out. That's what Dark Souls is doing now. And they're doing it while the internet exists. They're taking a game that should be kind of fundamentally simple, and they make it, they don't really explain anything to you. Sure, they explain basics, yes, they do that. But there's several items, several weapons, several things that you can do in that game, discover, that they never, ever explain to you.
Yeah.
And the only way and the only way you can discover them is either A, do it on your own, which good luck, because there's some of them that I'm like, really, dude? Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. This is a semi-spoiler, but really, if somebody freaks out, they're an idiot. There's a part in the game where there is this bad guy, or this enemy, that tries to kill you. There's several of them. You see them throughout this level. This particular one won't kill you unless you attack it. So, but the game doesn't tell you that. Never do they tell you that. You can literally walk up to it, it won't attack you, and you can actually hit a button or something and enter the back of it. Meaning it's a big old dude that's carrying a cage on his back. And you can walk up behind him and hit, I think, X, and you'll, if you're playing on PlayStation, and you will get in his cage. And he carries you off into this room, like this cave area where there's no entrance or exit, and he dumps you in there, and you can join a clan or a covenant there. Nowhere in the game, as far as I know, and again, maybe some Dark Souls freak can correct me, does it ever tell you to do that.
Just
it
a
never
nice
says
little bonus thing they
it never says, hey dude, go up to this enemy, he's friendly, and just get in his back, and then he'll carry you to a covenant.
No,
and that's part of like
never follow that instruction if someone told me to do that. Just go up to this dude. He won't attack you. Just get into his back, and he'll carry you to a secret room. Like, nope, I'm not doing any of those things.
So there's tons of that. That's just one example, and I believe you have to like get every covenant or clan or whatever to unlock the platinum. So if somebody's going after the platinum, they would have to be able to do that.
Yeah.
In fact, tonight, one of the things I did was, like, if you kneel or, do basically that Indian cross sitting position in a certain area, you get flown to an island. And I just did that tonight. Nice. Again, the game doesn't explain that to you. How did I know? Because I went and followed this guy, Fighting Cowboy, who 100% of the game. He's already beat the game like 3 times, and he tells you all the secrets. But my point is, and this is why I'm sharing it, they've taken this game and they've made it so complex that in order to unlock every secret, you would have to watch a playthrough, 100% playthrough, all the way through. You couldn't skip anything, because if you skip something, you're going to miss something.
And that sounds fascinating to me, and I
there's a lot of mystery to the game.
I will, at some point again, and it probably be in the near future, try it again. Say, okay, that was not a fair shake at it. I was falling asleep. I really wasn't in the mood for that type of a game. Let's try again at the right timing. So that could happen again, but I do need to
I'll probably come over to your house tomorrow.
Yeah.
And force you to play it.
Yeah, that won't be weird. Come on over. Let me ask you this though, before it's so good. I forgot to mention, by the way, you guys, that's got chocolate in it. For those of you who still want that recipe, I put it in the group a little bit ago. It's really good. But before you name, I don't want you to name a few other games. I'll give you I don't know, maybe 2 minutes to finish this.
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
But I want you to name a few other games you've started and not quite finished. But before we do that, I wanted to just ask, what's it like working for From Software? How's that been?
I mean, it's been an amazing journey. They when I signed the contract, they said, first thing we need you to do is be a Dark Souls hater. Like, let everybody know you hate that series, that franchise, call it garbage, insult it every 5 seconds. Get people to know that, that you hate the franchise.
Right.
And then what we want you to do is fake play the game. Like, I haven't actually played Dark Souls yet. Fake play the game and suddenly be won over by Dark Souls 3.
Yeah.
And then just start talking about how it's the greatest franchise in the world, that it plays better than The Witcher 3, and that The Witcher 3 is trash. And so that's part of my contract, and I think I've done a pretty good job.
Yeah,
I really
bad.
don't know anything about the game. I haven't actually played it yet. But From Software pays quite nice.
That'd be hilarious if Praise the Sun's actually a central storyline and you pretend like it was just an extra thing.
Yeah, it's just like you
Oh,
walk
no,
out
it's,
on a cliff and there's a sun there.
It's if it gets bright. They say sun. Never mind.
Yeah. Your character has a stash with blondie hair, and you walk out and you praise the sun.
Gosh.
Yep, fanboy.
All right, let's just give me a quick list. Some other games that you've started and not finished.
All right, yeah, I won't go into huge details, but Sunset Overdrive was a game I was excited about that Microsoft got from Insomniac. Played probably 3 hours of it and was like, okay, I can't stand the fact that I can't just run around in this open world. Like, you have to be sliding or jumping or doing something so you don't die right away. So I hated that, moved on. Firewatch, I've talked about this before. I still have not gone back to beat it. I think it's really pathetic that the game's 5 hours long, and I hated it that much that I won't even go back to it.
Okay.
Metal Gear Solid 5.
Oh,
Every time somebody talks about it, I'm like,
so good.
because I beat all the other Metal Gears, I'm like, I want to go back and play it, and then
That
I'm
game
like,
is so good.
no, I just don't want to. The other two I put on my list, and again, there's several more, but these are games that I like had a strong interest to play, and then when I actually played them, was like, oh, they're good, but I don't care about them. And that's the last two are Mad Max and Killzone Shadowfall.
I should have added Killzone to mine too. I did this. I played it for like an hour and a half, maybe. Didn't quite get me.
Well, I got further than that because Killzone was probably out of the two consoles that launched, Killzone was probably the game I was most excited for. Not just on the PS4, on the Xbox One and PS4, because I got both of them day one, and they both had decent launches as far as games coming out.
Right.
And Killzone Shadowfall was the one I was like, yes, I have to have it. I have to have a PS4 just for this game.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful game. I know some people were knocking how it isn't as beautiful as people say. I don't agree. I thought it was really beautiful. But I just thought it was really shallow and boring. Like the story was god awful. The gameplay was just repetitive and boring, which I get. Again, first person shooters are always kind of that way.
Yeah.
But this one didn't hook me at all, and I was a big fan of the previous Killzone game. So
my problem with it was that I
huge
spent
letdown.
a decent amount of time playing Destiny on the PS4 and then Wolfenstein on the PS4, and both of those are gorgeous and they play just so smoothly. And I just thought Killzone was a step behind in both those categories, both in terms of its visuals and in the sharpness of the controls. It just wasn't
I
quite
would
up to par.
agree. I would agree with that just because I like those two games far more. I will say Mad Max is actually a good game. I think the only reason why I won't sit there and beat it is because I'm like, it's just the same thing over and over, and it doesn't have a story I care about. Like,
I heard
it would
Colin
more have to
Moriarty
hook.
talking about it this week on PS I Love You, and it actually reminded me, I have that game. I bought it when it was on sale for $30. And the way he described it, he said, hey, if you like those open world Ubisoft games, you're taking over the map little by little, and as he's describing it, I'm like, I love those games. Why haven't I played this yet? So that one's probably going to get some attention here pretty soon.
Yeah, I think it's a fun game. I've actually played it twice. I bought it on PC when it launched for $20, and I played like 6 or 7 hours on the PC version and was like, okay, I like it, but I don't play PC games that much. I'd rather be on my PS4 and Xbox One, so I'm going to move on. It didn't hook me enough.
Right.
And then you bought it on the PS4, and I borrowed your copy through the mail.
Right.
And I started playing it, and I got another 6 or 7 hours in. I got a little bit further than I got on PC. And I was like, I think you and I even talked about it. I was like, it's really fun. I really like it. And then I just stopped playing it. It didn't hook me, and I think it's because it's one of those games where it's like, it's fun, but then when you die and have to drive all the way back to where you were, which was like miles and miles away, I was like, I just don't want to play this. Like, that was one of the games where I would play it, and then as soon as I die, I would flip over to Rocket League.
Right. Yep.
So I didn't last very long in that. I don't know if I'll ever return to it. Realistically, I'm probably not going to return to Sunset, Firewatch, Killzone, but I may return to Final Fantasy VII, MGS 5, and maybe Mad Max.
One that you didn't put on your list here, but I'm pretty sure you haven't finished yet. What are your thoughts on, just real quick, Far Cry Primal? Is that one you'll go back to?
It was actually one I was going to write on here, but Far Cry Primal fits into how I've played all the other Far Cry games, and that is I've bought 3 and 4 day one, played them for a few hours, liked them, I'm going to put it away for like a year, and then you're going to randomly hear me, again, if I haven't fired you beforehand, on the podcast say, I'm really enjoying Far Cry Primal. This is a really good game. Tim, you should play it.
Yeah, I wish you would have told me about this game.
Yeah, Tim, why didn't you tell me, man?
All right. Well, if there's one game that's coming out soon that I do not think will struggle with keeping our attention, it's Uncharted 4. And so that kicks off our discussion about news that we care about. So we're going to cover a few news stories that you and I care about. And the first one is Uncharted 4. It's coming out in just a couple of days. Most of you will listen to this on the Monday right before Uncharted drops. So maybe even right now you're listening to this, counting down the hours till you have access to Uncharted 4. And we're excited. I've read minimal kind of summary versions of reviews, looked at some of the scores, the aggregate scores. I'm trying not to read, definitely not watch any videos of too much here. So, but what we wanted to do is just talk about the fact that Uncharted 4 is reviewing fantastically. So I put a link here to the Metascore average. I don't know if you want to take a look at that, but what are your thoughts so far on what you've been hearing, what you've been reading about the Uncharted 4 reactions and reviews?
Yeah, they lifted the embargo today, and the reviews, I'm kind of like you, where I'm trying not to watch too much, but I was interested in like the opinions of others.
Right.
So it's been reviewing really well.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't listen to a lot of them, but I will tell you, the 2 videos I watched were GameSpot and IGN.
Okay.
Now, IGN didn't give like their final score.
Because of the
GameSpot,
multiplayer?
yeah, GameSpot did. The reviewer actually had played a good amount of multiplayer, so he went ahead and gave his final score, which was a 10 out of 10. I mean, he just praised everything about it, basically.
Right. Yeah. That's a hefty score for GameSpot.
Well, you know what, and this is a subject for another time, but I will just throw it out there because I have said this to a few people on our group, our Facebook group. GameSpot is not the same GameSpot that maybe some of y'all remember from 5 years ago. And that is, and to use an example, GameSpot was well known for giving The Last of Us a 7, which 7's not a terrible score, but
for
The Last of Us was getting 9s to 10s easily, kind of like Uncharted 4. And they came out and said, oh, it's a 7.
Yeah.
And then they gave several other games. They gave,
by the way, shout out to Frank Clark. That's a try-hard review right there.
Yeah, it was a try-hard review.
It really
and
is.
It was the same guy that reviewed Zelda's Skyward Sword, which I know some people are going to yell, I agree with him. But everybody was giving Skyward Sword like 9s and 10s.
They're all like nervous people who don't usually speak up in public. I agree.
I agree.
When they finally start talking, their eyes get all watery. They don't know how to speak. I agree.
I should just go into the business of making up voices for people. Maybe I should be a voice actor.
Yeah. Do it.
But anyway, so the same reviewer, I'm not going to release his name, for GameSpot, that gave The Last of Us a 7, also gave Skyward Sword a 7. And he actually had to go on a show and explain his score because that's how enraged fans were when they found out he gave that game a 7. And they reacted the same way with The Last of Us. Anyways, my point is GameSpot used to have a whole crew, because I follow GameSpot more than I follow IGN, or I used to.
Right.
And they had a whole crew of terrible, not only reviewers, but just just god-awful games media employees. Like, they were all about an agenda, and they were destroying video games when it came to their agenda and their reviews. A lot of the reviews, they would put their own smear campaigns on certain games if they just, this game is too violent, so they would dock it down. And it was like, your job's to review the game for what it is, not tell it what it's not allowed to be.
Yeah, that's a good
and
call. Yeah.
that entire crew is gone. I can tell you all the names of them, because again, I followed that site very, very closely. They're all gone. And so what I've noticed is I've actually started going back to GameSpot, because I didn't go to GameSpot for about 4 years. And I've started going back there because they've cleaned them out. It's almost like the CEO or somebody high up was like, man, these guys suck. Let's just clean them all out and just get an entirely new crew.
They're pretty reliable for news these days, too, I think.
Yeah, they're really good. And the reviewers now, and again, I know some people are going to listen to it, they're really good because they gave Uncharted 4 a 10. No, that's not how I work. They're really good because even when they don't like something, their reasoning for not liking it is acceptable in my opinion, because it's about the game, not about what they think a game should be.
So they gave it a 10. What's everyone else giving it? What's the Metascore for this thing?
IGN gave it an 8.8 so far.
So far, right.
So there was actually a little bit of a debate on our Facebook page today, and apparently, well, the way it started is Frank Clark, gonna call him out, posted in our group, God, Beyond's overreacting. And Beyond, for those who don't know, is a podcast for IGN, and they've got their own Facebook group,
huge
like
group.
10,000 members now.
It's well over 10,000 now, yeah.
And I'm not a part of it, but basically he was saying that a lot of the group was acting childish because Lucy O'Brien is reviewing Uncharted 4, and she gave it, so far, it's subject to change, an 8.8.
Right.
And that basically that 8.8 is for the campaign. So it could go down or it could go higher, but that will be based off of how much she likes the multiplayer or how good she thinks it is.
Yep.
So right now, her verdict is, hey, the campaign that I played, it's an 8.8. It's great, but it's got flaws. And people are not happy about that because every other review, which is what you're trying to get at, is basically I won't say the opposite, because she still gave it a good review. They're basically just praising everything.
Yeah, I kind of skimmed through the review, and she had a lot of glowing things to say about that game. I think some of the criticisms came in with, some of the pacing towards the third act, I think she mentioned, and a few other little moments here and there, the way they handled stuff. But I don't know. I see 8.8. Here's the thing. I visit Rotten Tomatoes a lot, RottenTomatoes.com, and that's a good way to get an idea of how good a movie is. Now, plenty of times critics give a movie a score, and I 100% disagree with it. But more often than not, if it's quote-unquote certified fresh by Rotten Tomatoes, that means a majority of critics have given it a positive rating. A lot of times I will end up enjoying it as well. So, for example, this weekend's big movie release is Captain America Civil War, the new big Marvel movie, essentially Avengers 3, although it's not. It's a Captain America movie. And that's right now sitting at, I think, a 93%, something in the low 90s there. And that's phenomenal. It gives me a lot of confidence that I'm going to enjoy this movie. And so, but the same thing happens when it gets an 85 or a 90 or an 88 in this example. An 8.8, same thing as getting an 88. That's a great score. That's a score that I feel reassured that even someone who seems to be knocking it for things that I don't care about, some of the things that I skimmed over in her review, I'm like, well, I don't think I'd dock it for that issue, but okay. Like the fact that she's nitpicking things that I don't care that much about, and that's why the score is not super high, tells me that I am very reassured in my pre-order of this game, and I'm very excited for it. So sometimes reviews shouldn't be looked at as this objective, this is what the game is valued at. It's more of, based on what this reviewer thinks is important, and you have to read the review to figure that out, this is the score they gave it. And if you wouldn't dock it points for those negatives, maybe it's going to be a 10 to you, or a 9.5 to you, or whatever. So sometimes reviews just need to be taken into consideration, actually they always should, with who's writing it, what they think is important. And
yeah. And
Should always
that's
be
what I
considered.
said in the post. Frank was talking about the review, and he said, because he likes Lucy O'Brien, which is fine. I mean, you have a
I
right
don't
to
have a
like
strong
her.
opinion about it. Yeah, she's fine. She's fine. She's been cool on some of the
I
podcasts I've listened to. I don't know. Whatever.
don't personally like her. I find her to be a little PC to my liking, a little too PC for my liking, a little annoying. So I think she's overly harsh about things.
By the way,
I
Lucy's a
don't.
mega fan of Fathers of the Grind. So sorry, Lucy, for everything he's saying right now.
Yeah, I'm sure she's a big listener. So, anyways, my point is I commented on there and said I have no problem with her 8.8 score because she doesn't impact my life at all. I don't really care. But I just said, as an FYI, just so y'all know where I come from, I don't like her. I'm not a big fan of her, so I can understand why certain people would be upset because if they feel the same way I do, they'd be like, why is that person reviewing it? She's annoying. But at the same time, that's who IGN chose. It's not a big deal. It's not like she came out and was like, I really like this game. It's really good. Blah, blah, blah. Here's one thing wrong with it. 6.8. You know, it's not like she was completely unfair.
No.
She found things wrong with it, and she
That are
docked
important
it.
to her. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as long as it's not outside of what the game really is, that's when I have an issue. Like, if people are saying this game is bad because they didn't do what I wanted if I made the game, then I have a problem with the review. If the person says, I played this game, I know what they're trying to make, what they were trying to do, I just didn't like it, personally, not for any other reasons outside of, I just didn't like it, I'm okay with you docking it down. That's your choice, you know?
And the same thing happened last year, right around the same time. The big release that was coming out in May last year was The Witcher 3, which I, of course, as I've talked about a million times, was very hyped for, and I ended up loving. My favorite game of the year. My favorite game in several years. And I remember
It's the reason you can't like Dark Souls because
That's why.
it's trash and Dark Souls isn't.
I learned to love trash. I couldn't enjoy the real games, but whatever. So what happened was I read through. I think it was Vince. I don't know how to spell his last. Is it
Incognito.
Incognito or Incognito? I think it's Incognito. But anyway, so it's Vince from IGN, and he is very articulate. I actually do think he is a skilled writer. I just tend to disagree with many of the kind of the final conclusions he comes to based on the observations he makes. I think he's great with detail and a good writer. I just disagree with the conclusion he comes to based on this and this that I noticed. Here is how I conclude that here's what it's worth. Here's how important that thing is. I disagree with him almost every time. I find him to be likable enough on podcasts and stuff he's on. I just find myself disagreeing with him a lot. So when I read that Witcher 3 review, I think he gave it like a 9.1 or 9.3, something in the low nines. That thrilled me to see that because I knew in most cases I felt that he was overly harsh on most games based on things that I don't think are important. So the few reviews of his that I've read, everything from Witcher 3, I think he did Metal Gear Solid 5 as well, but even reviews before that I've read of his, I remember thinking, really? He's not going to... That's a negative that he's listing? That's something he's going to write a full paragraph about? I don't care about that at all. That's really weird that he would bother. Okay, whatever. And so I already kind of knew going in, he's probably going to be about a point, maybe even a point and a half harsher than I would be on this game. So to see that he ranked it above a 9... I knew immediately this is going to be nearly a perfect game for me, and it was. And that's just the way. The same thing with Metal Gear Solid 5. He actually gave that one a 10, I think. But in the review, he talks about a bunch of negative things that I ended up not thinking were negative. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. The reviewer, who's writing it, where are they coming from? What are they normally nitpicky about? Do they have some kind of, like you talked about earlier, do they have some kind of underlying reason for liking or disliking something? Is there some kind of social issue that's being addressed in a way in the game that they don't like and they're going to take out their frustrations in this review? Who knows what's happening? But as long as you have an understanding of who's writing the review and why the score landed where it did, I think we can all just kind of relax about the scores a little bit. All that being said...
overall, I mean... I'm sorry, I was just going to say, overall... Uncharted did amazing. So
yeah, I was going to say, all that being said, we just waxed poetic on what we think about scores and a few specific reviewers. The bottom line is these aggregate scoring sites, Metacritic or Rotten Tomatoes or others like it, they in my opinion, do a great job at letting us, the users, the potential consumers, know if something's worth our money, because it throws out the window individual reviewers, Lucy O'Brien or Vince Incognito, right? It throws out their individual biases or tendencies, and it just gives a summary average score from a whole bunch of different reviewers, and it usually lands on a pretty solid, pretty decent, and trustworthy number. And in this case, Uncharted 4: A Thief's End is currently, after just under 70 reviews, sitting at a 94. And that's the average.
Straight.
That's the average right now. This isn't user reviews where it's just nailing a bunch of 10s because a user says it's beautiful 10 or it installed 10 or whatever their user reviews are. It's not that at all. This is critic reviews. And from what I can tell, Metacritic requires you to be actually some sort of actual gaming review website or blog at least.
Yeah.
So anyway, all that to say, this game is reviewing wonderfully, and I cannot wait to play it.
I'm probably going to go to Sony about getting a refund for it because it didn't hit a 95 average.
I thought you were getting a refund for it because I'm already buying it, and you don't need to now. No?
Well, yes. I like to see if I can get $0 back for spending $0. So that's what I'm going to try to do.
I'm game sharing with my friend, and I didn't like the game.
Sony? Actually, I'll probably start the letter off with like, "Dear Kaz, I'm game sharing, and my friend bought this game. Can you please give me $60 back? I don't like the game." See what Kaz says.
He will turn you into a fantastic tweet. Don't you worry about that.
Yeah, I'm sure he will.
All right. Well, speaking of big games that are coming out this year, we just got a release date for another huge release this year, and that is Dishonored 2. It's the follow-up to Arcane Studios' first-person assassination stealth game. They referred to it in this article in Polygon as a first-person assassination simulator. I guess I never really thought of it that way in playing that game as a simulator. But anyway, it is a very cool, very aesthetically pleasing, very stylized first-person game.
With as many options that they give you, I mean, it does stuff probably closer to what Hitman does.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the paths you can take, you mean?
Yeah, I know in the first Dishonored. Now, I won't go on a long. I can talk stories. I actually
I'm gonna peel this orange and eat it while you do it. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah. Or if you want to just put your head down on that.
I might just close my eyes.
Fluffy pink pillow that I sent to you.
I'm gonna fire up Dark Souls 3 again while you talk. Go ahead.
I would actually approve of that. But when I first bought Dishonored, I was real excited about it. Obviously, I get excited about everything. And I started playing it, and I didn't like it. But one of the cool things that I liked about it was the very first... Did you play Dishonored?
Yeah. Yeah, it's another one that I didn't beat, but I have it. I even got the definitive edition in hopes to play it all the way through.
Finish it.
But it's really fun. I have no reason to stop playing that game. It was really fun. It's a beautiful game. Yeah. I like it a lot.
It's actually one that I went away from for like a year, but when you first play the very first mission, they give you several ways. They just leave it open to you.
You're talking about after the whole prologue thing where you kind of escape and then establish yourself with this new group.
Yeah, this is actually the first
you go out on your first mission. Okay, yeah.
Where you're going to assassinate somebody.
Yep.
And the freedom that they give you, I ended up actually, and I'm really crappy at stealth games, I snuck in the room that the two characters were meeting in, and I poisoned the drinks, I think they were, and then I went out a window, and I stood by the window sill, and I heard their conversation, and I just sat there for a little bit, and I watched them drink their drinks, and I watched them both die. And I thought, how freaking cool is that? That I didn't go in, and I'm usually a guns blazing type guy, and I actually ended up playing the rest of the game that way, where it was like, oh, you should go in stealthy. Nope, Rambo, blow everything up.
That crossbow's pretty awesome too, by the way.
Yeah, I went in just guns blazing, crossbow blazing, everything.
Yeah.
And but that first mission was kind of like, wow, and that's how the entire game is. Now, if you play, I will say this, and it's realistic. They tell you, oh yeah, you can play it however you want. But they punish you if you go in guns blazing.
Yeah.
Like, if you go guns blazing, understand that you're probably going to die a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened, and that was one of the reasons why I quit the game, is I was like, this game's too hard, too hardcore for me, I'm out, type thing. And I eventually came back to it, changed the way I played. I was like, alright, I'll try it a little bit more stealthy, and I ended up getting into the game and really enjoying it. Nice. So that being said, my hype level for Dishonored 2 is really, really high, because I ended up really, really liking Dishonored. I did finish it, and I loved every moment of it after I made my adjustments to how I played it.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to it. So I don't know if you said it.
No, they announced it
November 11th.
Yeah, they announced it last year during their press briefing, and so it was just cool that everyone knows it's in development. Well, now they've got more details that are rolling out, and there have been more stories since this one. And so if you guys just search for Dishonored 2, there's been a few other pieces of news that have dropped, but we'll just cover the release date and a few of the general kind of the sweeping statements they made about the game setup. So it's going to come out November 11th, like Derek said. So this fall's, of course, as every fall is starting to get very crowded. It'll feature 2 playable characters this time. You could be either Corvo Atano, the hero from the last game, or Emily Caldwin. Spoiler alert. Yeah. Spoiler alert for everyone who's listening. So skip ahead if you don't want to be spoiled on the story. She was the young princess at the center of the first game, and she's now grown up. And so, I mean, it doesn't really spoil too much, I guess, but she survives.
Yeah.
Once again, it's possible to complete the game without killing anyone. That is something I heard about the first game, although I'm not really sure how that would work. But with enough distraction and other kind of tools, I could see that working, I suppose.
Yeah, you have darts that you can use that knock guys out. It's kind of like MGS.
Yeah.
You don't have to kill in Metal Gear.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
Yeah, so the second one's going to be releasing just over 4 years after the original. So nice space between the two. It's not a quick turnaround Assassin's Creed style, but it's also not so far away from its sequel that people have forgotten about it. So it's nice timing, I think, in terms of an official sequel. So they're going to show off gameplay from Dishonored 2 at E3. And so you'll want to check that out on Sunday, June 12th. They will show something.
I will be checking that out.
Yeah, well, speaking of E3, this is getting really weird with Nintendo. Things are just getting awkward over there. So everyone knows about the Nintendo news to delay Zelda yet again, although they were adamant in 2015, it's coming in 2015. Then they were adamant that, don't worry, it's going to come in 2016 after they delayed it. Well, now it's been pushed back to 2017, which most realists knew was going to happen. Most optimists are heartbroken by because they believed them. But most people who know Nintendo and how they handle Zelda, this isn't that surprising. It's disappointing, but it's not that surprising. And of course, the NX is going to be shipping in March too, which is a weird time frame. If it is indeed a true home console, that's a weird time frame. But this E3 will not be the big NX debut that we were all hoping and expecting. So Nintendo's going to be involved with E3. They're going to be there, but they're not going to have a big conference, just like they haven't in recent years. And really the only game they're going to have that's majorly playable and that's featured is going to be Zelda. And I assume it's going to be the Zelda Wii U edition. So that's going to be Nintendo's presence at E3. And I've heard a lot of talk on other podcast shows and reading other website articles and stuff where they are fully expecting this to be a, Zelda Disneyland type of a booth where it's going to be really cool, lots of experiences, and I'm sure visually it's going to be amazing and lots of chances to play certain sections of the game. That's all good and well. That's fine. I'm just, overall, I have a weird feeling about what's going on with Nintendo. I'm still cautiously optimistic that this NX system is going to be cool, and I'm going to jump back on the Nintendo bandwagon. But the pessimistic side of me, the side of me that listens to all these comments, not only in other groups, but even in our group sometimes, the pessimistic side of me is like, oh, I think they might be handicapping themselves yet again in this next hardware release. But anyway, what are your thoughts on Nintendo's E3 presence and their plans, as well as what in the world they're doing with their new system?
I think at this point, like I'm not a Nintendo fanboy by any stretch, but I'm also not a hater or whatever you want to say. but I'm not. I've lost. I don't know. I was so hyped for Zelda Wii U when I first saw it, like legitimately hyped. Like I was like, wow, that was the game of E3. What was it, E3 2014 when they first showed it?
I thought it was just last year, but I guess it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was 2014.
Yeah.
And then they showed a little bit. I don't even know. I think they just... No, they didn't even talk about it in 2015. But anyway, so I was really, really hyped. I was like, that was my game, of the show. And it's kind of like what happened to No Man's Sky for a lot of people. Like, when they first saw it, they were like, oh, that game, I need to play it, I love it, blah, blah, blah. And now it's taken, 2 or 3 years since we first saw it for it to come out.
Yeah.
And while a lot of people are still hyped, a lot of people are also like, okay, I'll buy it, but, I'm not that hyped for it, I'll play it, whatever. That's kind of how I feel about Zelda right now. I was also really excited about Nintendo NX. I was telling people, excuse me, Nintendo can crap in a box, I'm going to pre-order it. At this point, I'm really glad it's coming out in 2017 with everything Sony's doing late 2016. So financially, it makes things a little bit easier for me. But I'm also losing a lot of interest. Like, there's no, news coming from Nintendo that makes me go, hey guys, I still want to support you. Again, I'm not writing them off. I'm not a hater, nothing like that. I'm not even pitching a fit. It's just, I'm just speaking personally, I don't feel like they're doing anything to make me go, this is why I love Nintendo. Like, there's nothing exciting.
Yeah.
There's nothing exciting going on with the Wii U. I almost bought Star Fox, but I held off because I was like, Derek, you're not going to play it. You're not. And I didn't buy it, and I'm so glad I didn't. But there's nothing else coming out on the Wii U I give a crap about. So I feel like, and again, I don't feel like I wasted money on the Wii U. I bought it the first day it came out.
It's had some great games, yeah.
It's had some great games, and I still love the system, and there's still games on there. Zelda, one of them, that I need to play and beat, so I still have some use for the system. But overall, I'm just speaking how I feel about Nintendo right now is I feel numb. I feel nothing. There's not excitement, but there's also not to the point where I'm like, oh, I don't care about them at all. I just don't feel anything. Like, there's nothing. I don't pay attention to them anymore. I care more about Sony and Microsoft because they actually give me a reason to care. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It makes 100% sense. And I actually have a cure for your Nintendo apathy. There's a rumor out right now that Nintendo might be switching back over to cartridges instead of discs. Is that exciting?
And that is exactly what I needed Nintendo to announce. No, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's just a rumor, and it's actually very far-fetched. It's quite a stretch.
Really is.
But it's, you never know what's going to happen. This company that, long story short, you guys, real quick, the company that provides their ROM chips for both consoles and for 3DS game cartridges, they've some kind of financial statement or something came out publicly that sounds like Nintendo is requesting a lot more than usual, and that could be indication. There's speculation that could mean a cartridge development for this new NX, more than they ever normally would request for the 3DS, for example. So it's possible. I wouldn't put it past them to do something like that, especially with the cross compatibility of possibly a home and portable console in one. But it could have nothing to do with cartridges. It could be something internally for each system. It could be some sort of on-the-go option for your home console games that doesn't have any kind of drive, that's only download. Maybe it is an optical drive. It could be anything at this point.
Here's my issue with the article, and I really do have an issue with the article. Like, IGN really annoyed me with this because this is what games media is doing. It's almost like they're following like TMZ and CNN and Fox News, all them, and they're taking.
He took a picture of Nintendo on the beach with some cartridges.
Yeah, I mean, it's
and he created
just
a story out of it.
It's basically they get this little bit of news. Now, here's what I would have done with this news. Just internally, my brain would have gone, okay, Nintendo is doing something. So I like where the writer first goes, okay, this probably does mean something for the NX. What I have a problem with is that, I'm paraphrasing here, I'm just going by memory. Isn't the heading something like Nintendo's maybe looking to replace discs with cartridges on the next NX or whatever, right? They specifically say something along the lines that discs won't be included, it'll just be cartridges. That's the way they're going. So that's where the writer wants you to go. Like, the writer wants you to click on there, it's clickbait, wants you to click on this article and read about how Nintendo, because there's going to be a spike in cartridges, that means that the NX is probably cartridge only.
Yeah.
That is stupid.
It's quite a leap.
It took me like 2 seconds to go, okay, we've already heard rumors that the NX is probably going to be a handheld / console hybrid. What that means to me is they're probably, and I'm going to say 3DS, but I really think it's going to be a different handheld, that they're going to make their next console have the ability to play your handheld games on it. Right. So let's say Fire Emblem comes out on the next 3DS handheld type system from Nintendo, and you're like, I'd prefer to play this on my NX. You can take that cartridge out, put it in the NX, and play it.
Yeah.
Now, does that at all mean that they will no longer have a disc slot? Or be able to support third-party games because they're going cartridge only? No, and that's where a lot of people went. As soon as they saw that article, they're like, this is going to doom Nintendo. Nintendo's dumb. Yeah. They're not going to be able to play discs. That's going to get rid of third-party. And I'm like, no, that's what the writer is saying, and the writer is an idiot. What Nintendo would be doing, and if they do this, call me out, they are idiots if they do this. But all I'm thinking Nintendo's going to do is allow you to do both. Yeah. Hey, play your handheld cartridge, or pop in your third-party disc from Ubisoft and play it on our brand new powerful NX. And so that was my issue with the article. I thought it was really dumb. It was really spinning it to make Nintendo look dumber than they really are, because it's so easy to bash Nintendo, and because most people don't have high expectations and opinions of Nintendo.
Right.
When they see an article heading like that, they don't even read it. They immediately jump to Nintendo is dumb.
Well, I really like your idea that maybe it is for the option to play a portable game on a home console. I didn't think about that one. The thought that I had was maybe it has nothing to do with games. It's got more to do with information being passed from the portable to the home version of the console. Something to do with that. I have no idea. It might have nothing to do with a cartridge or card slot of any kind. It might just be a certain kind of ROM chip is needed for the internals of one or both of these systems, whatever they're going to end up being. So It could be nothing. It could be something. The discussion is interesting because I am excited at the idea of Nintendo doing something new that links maybe two different experiences in a way that hasn't been done before. That's all very exciting to me. I get the fear. I get the fear about third-party support. I really do. I totally get that fear. I also think I
just hate that they would jump to that. Like, the article wants you to jump to that.
Well, of course it does. I mean, right there in the first paragraph, at the end of the first paragraph, it says, it sparked speculation as to whether the upcoming NX will drop the use of optical disc drives in favor of cartridges. At no point did this...
It must be one or the other. It can't be both. Like, that's why I thought it was so
Neither
stupid.
This ROM chip manufacturing company nor Nintendo said anything about optical discs or cartridges or what type of proprietary game carrying device they're going to use. They didn't say anything about anything. And so none of this is official. None of this is even like, ooh, there's hints of this happening. It's simply someone connecting the dots from A all the way to Q, basically. Like, there's not a whole lot of connections to make.
Oh, I don't think they're connecting anything because I think they're an idiot. But maybe if they're a writer, they're considered a genius because I'm sure they got a lot of clicks for that.
Oh, yeah. It's easily shareable. Yeah, absolutely.
And I personally expect higher from IGN. I expect that stuff from, like, Kotaku and all those crappy websites. But, like, IGN and GameSpot, they usually, or at least lately, they usually stay away from blatant clickbait opinion pieces and stuff like that.
So let's go ahead and begin your official complaint letter here. Dear IGN, this is Derek Teague.
I am pissed.
No, you need
You
you
know,
need to say, if you're gonna use that voice, you got to say things like appalled.
Oh, no.
All right, so
Let me be pissed.
let's move on past that to our last news story of the day. Thank you guys for sticking with us here for this episode.
They cut off like 35 hours.
All right, cool. This is just for you and me then. This is a very exciting story. This is a game that's been much talked about, at least in terms of the talent that's going to be behind it. And so finally we're getting some official news that was announced on Star Wars Day, May the 4th. And EA, their executive, I don't know if he just says he's an executive. I'm not sure what position he has. His name is Patrick Soderlund. He revealed that they are working with Respawn for an all-new third-person action-adventure game set in the Star Wars universe, in addition to working on Titanfall 2. So Respawn's doing some double duty there. So there's a couple things here. I do believe that Amy Hennig is involved, right? I'm scanning through the article to see. I thought she was involved with this one, or is that different?
I think she's working with Visceral Games.
That's
the guys
Visceral.
who did,
That's right. So this is going to be different than that.
Yeah.
All right.
There's a couple, and these are just theories. First of all, the director is from God of War 3.
Oh, nice.
So that immediately says, I'm not saying it has to be exactly like God of War, but that tells me since it's a third-person action game, it's probably going to have combat similar to God of War.
Yeah.
There's a certain Star Wars game that just actually went on sale this week. There's a couple of them that plays kind of like that. And that's Star Wars Unleashed.
Yeah, the Force Unleashed. Yeah.
So, and here's the thing. Yeah, Force Unleashed, sorry. So my brain goes immediately to, they're just going to reboot that series. Because overall, I thought the Star Wars Force Unleashed games had a great concept. They just had terrible execution.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe EA and now Respawn, which I think this is, first of all, that's a story in itself. Respawn was, I'm sure they're a little bit bigger now, a very, very small studio, and all their experience was in first-person shooters.
Right.
Everybody who created Titanfall was all from Call of Duty, creating teams, and that type of work. None of them were third-person action programmers.
Mm-hmm.
So now they've obviously hired on. They got the God of War 3 director or whatever he is, and they're creating this new game that's a third-person game. So I think that's pretty cool. It's going outside of what Respawn as a, I guess they're a developer, has ever developed before. And also they're doing it they're getting experience from an established franchise in God of War. So I do think it's going to be, my thought was that it's going to be like a Force Unleashed reboot. They're not going to like make a third one or a prequel or anything like that. Because I think, like I said, while the first two games, a lot of people liked the first one, a lot of people hated the second one. The franchise was not that successful as far as it comes to being quality games.
Right. Yeah, I didn't think so.
I think they sold okay. I don't know their numbers, but honestly, if you put Star Wars on it, it's going to sell decent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Give you a
so
lightsaber to play with. Yeah, people like that.
Yeah. So that's my thought. I'm not saying that's what it is. I just think it's going to be like a Force Unleashed reboot. The other theory is that it's really, and I could be off on my numbers, the game 1313.
Right.
That was what it was, right?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 1313 got canceled, and so now some people think, no, it's not really canceled. This is Respawn making it now. So those are a couple games we may see coming out when this gets announced. I'm curious if you think we'll see anything at E3 about it, like any type of announcement.
No, I don't think so. I think this is the announcement for this year. I think it's, from the sound of things, they're so early on in development.
Yeah, it's probably really early.
So they're going to focus on, I think Titanfall 2 is the thing that's in that main pipeline with Respawn right now. Not saying they're not big enough to handle two games at once. I do think they are, but...
they probably are now. I mean,
yeah. So I do
published by EA.
I do think it's going to be a little while till we get a lot more info on it. But who knows? They could surprise us with maybe like some kind of a
it could be
CG
something
trailer,
completely new,
or maybe even just the title, and maybe coming spring 2017 or something. Who knows? Who knows what they'll do? But I do think that there's a high possibility that with the director of God of War 3 being on, we're in for some very fast-paced, very, who knows, maybe even more violent than we're used to, Star Wars combat. Now, maybe like still rated T for teen type violence. I'm not talking God of War heads ripped off violence, but I mean, towards the end of that game, when you really have the full slate of powers at your disposal, all the different rolling and the jumping and the way you can combo moves together while shooting your arrows and then turning around and freezing a whole group, and then you can slam down, like all these different moves that happen in this fast succession, and you can use all your powers all at once. I could totally see whether it's a Jedi or maybe even a bounty hunter being pushed all the way to the limit to use all their powers, all their abilities, all their fighting skills. I could see that being a really cool, Boba Fett or maybe Jango Fett, probably Boba Fett type of a game with all your bounty hunter tools and gadgets. I could also see it being a really cool Jedi game where you're maybe this fully powered Jedi way back in the day, or perhaps something, during the in-between years of 3 and 4, something. They could do a whole bunch of different things with it, but I'm very excited at the idea of this guy with this action game, this very amazingly put together action game pedigree, directing this. So that gets me excited, and I'm looking forward to seeing more about it.
Same here. I mean, the only thing that I would really, really want is, I feel like a lot of Star Wars games are very shallow when it comes to like story and even diving into the lore correctly. Knights of the Old Republic is the only franchise I can think of off the top of my head that did it properly, that took that that lore and really nailed it, and created their own stories out of it too. Like all the characters that were in it weren't from Star Wars movies. They created their own characters, their own lore in that universe. And I really wish and really hope that EA has something special here, and that they really. And I'm not saying just for this game. I'm talking in general. That whenever they release anything that has to do with Star Wars, that it won't be shallow like Battlefront. And again, I'm not knocking Battlefront.
No,
I understand what Battlefront is.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I don't want just, well, here's a shooter with Star Wars skin. Here's a pilot game with Star Wars skin.
Yeah. Well,
here's an action third-person game with Star Wars skin, but there's nothing else.
Yeah, I'd
it.
be very surprised if that's the case. I think if anything, it's going to be a game that has an interesting, maybe even fantastic story, but maybe the gameplay itself isn't quite up to snuff. If anything's going to be lacking in this game, my guess is that really cool story and visuals. They're going to have money, like unlimited amounts of money, basically, to make this thing look beautiful. It's possible that we could come back saying, yeah, but the gameplay wasn't quite on par with, let's say, God of War, for example. The action wasn't there, or Uncharted shooting, or whatever. It's not quite up to par with some of these other games in whatever way. That could be the area where there's going to be a shortcoming. But we'll see. We'll see how it comes together.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. I do love some Star Wars. So, cool. All right, great. Well, I think that just about wraps us up for this week. Anything else you need to share with the group, Derek? Anything you need to get off your chest?
Well, I'm still angry about your Dark Souls 3 excuses.
Yeah.
BS.
Yeah. Well, the later it's getting in the evening, the less I care. So it's funny because I usually am like a people pleaser. I'm like, oh, you know what? Everyone wants me to play it. I should play it, and I should enjoy it. But like now that I'm just starting to get real tired, the yawns are coming in full force. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I don't care. I don't.
You do care, Tim. You will play it.
I probably will play it at some point. Yeah.
At some point, being tonight and tomorrow.
Okay, I'm skipping work tomorrow. Apparently, interesting.
Oh, I'd love to skip work tomorrow. All right, let's wrap it.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. We will talk to you soon.
Who is your daddy? I am the father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?
Eli started snoring towards the end of the show, so you're definitely going to get a little bit of Darth Vader in there. So we got farting in the beginning and snoring at the end.